Our philosophy has always been the university and parents both share the same goal. We want students to succeed. We want our students to thrive and be wonderful here. And we would much rather walk hand in hand with families along the way than hold them at elbow's length and say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. We really want to partner in a way that a high tide rises all boats, if you will.
Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast, a show where we bring together Marcom leaders from both inside and outside higher ed to give you fresh perspectives on successful content creation and strategy in higher education. My name is John Azzoni. I'm the founder of Unveiled, a video production company working specifically with colleges and universities. Learn more about our work, including our subscription approach to storytelling at unveiled.tv. That's UNVEILD. And if you like this podcast, then you'll love the Higher Ed Storytellers Digest. It's my free weekly newsletter where we cover a lot of ground about content creation and strategy. Sign up at unveiled.tv/newsletter. All right, let's get on with the show. So we're talking about parent and family communications today, a super important and often overlooked segment of your audience that your content should be speaking to directly. And whether that's through emails or a section of your website, or in this case, for today's episode, a blog that has gained quite a big following on Wake Forest University's campus called the Daily Deac. And the voice behind the blog is Betsy Chapman. Betsy is the Senior Executive Director of Family Communications and Engagement at Wake Forest. And in this episode, we talk about what it looks like to communicate on a literal daily basis with parents and families through your content. What are the things that they're responding to, and how this blog has made an impact in some areas that might surprise you. So here's my conversation with Betsy Chapman. All right. Well, Betsy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, John.
So this is the third episode, and what I would say is like a trilogy of parent comms episodes. So we had Rita Winthrop on the show a couple months ago and talking about melt comms. And then she mentioned parent comms and the importance of parent comms in there. And then kind of a follow-up to that episode was Laura Rudolph, who does consulting and is knee-deep in parent communications. So that whole episode was about parent comms, and we talked about Wake Forest's website as one of the examples to highlight of good parent web pages.
And we were so honored, by the way.
Yeah. And now we have the final boss of parent and family communications. So glad to have you here.
Well, thanks for having us. And I now want that on a business card, final boss.
The final boss in the trilogy. I don't know how many Lord of the Rings episodes there were. I've not seen a single one, but I know that they're long and there's at least 3 of them.
Indeed. Indeed. My husband is the biggest Lord of the Rings fan. That is a whole separate podcast, though.
Okay. Well, what's something that you've been nerding out about lately? It doesn't have to be work related.
So I have 3, actually. I would say mind games, murder, and mistakes. And before anybody panics about what that means, let me explain. So mind games, as I get older, I'm turning 56 tomorrow. So I am becoming increasingly aware of needing to stay mentally sharp. So my mornings start with doing all the New York Times things, the Wordle, the crossword, the connections, all of that. Murder in the sense that I am a true crime fan. And I'm particularly interested in the things that happen behind the scenes that maybe normal people wouldn't know. So I'm kind of fascinated by things like depositions and how do people ask the questions that they want to ask that helps get you to understand maybe what took place. So I like watching those kinds of shows. And I say mistakes because I'm also really interested in looking at PR crises, not necessarily with higher ed, but just in general. So what happened? Did somebody handle something well? Did somebody handle something, maybe it could have been a little bit better? How did you decide on language? So I'm really interested in kind of thinking through the behind the scenes of those things.
Interesting. So Wordle, I think Wordle was invented by a student at Central Michigan University.
Very nice.
That I found out. And my dad and my stepmom play Wordle. And when we go up north and visit them for vacation, they're battling back and forth. But yeah, it's about that time, I should probably...
You got to keep the brain plastic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also fascinated by depositions too. And I'm like, I would be so bad at this. I would be so bad at trying to... my kids will lie to me all the time and they're so good at it. And I'm so bad at detecting it.
Well, it's just so interesting because you see things that come out in, publicized trials or whatever, but there's a million legal steps that take place before that and all of the like really boring little things that they have to ask. So I like nerdily reading some of that stuff just to see, what's the final product versus what were the things that people had to talk through and find out to get to that point.
Yeah. Well, cool. So give us a lay of the land of, your role at Wake Forest. Tell us why parent and family communications is an important part of your career.
So, my title is actually Senior Executive Director of Family Communications and Engagement, which is really sort of a fancy way of saying I'm kind of the Chief Communications Strategist and voice for Wake Forest parents and families. So, that involves everything from creating publications for parents and families. We have a series of things that we do over the summer for our incoming first year families. We send a message to them every week via email, like, here's what you need to know as an incoming parent and family, because those new families are really at their highest information need. And we want to make sure, like, we respect that people have jobs and aging parents and other kids potentially and busy lives. So we want to try to make that matriculation process as easy as we can for our new families. But our goal really is to try to figure out how can we open the front door of Wake Forest in a way that gives students the autonomy and space to be students and go through all of the student development processes that they need to. How do they, grow into the people that they're going to be, while providing both. A parent had once told me that my job was providing information and comfort. So,
Mm.
trying to find that balance between how do we explain what's happening on campus, what are campus traditions or events? Do you have a single person that you can go to when you have questions or problems that I can help point you in other places? And also providing some advice on what are the things that are helpful to do with a college student that might look different from what you did in the K-12 environment. So, probably like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, I've been at Wake for 27 years. And I should say I was a student here too. So I'm working for my alma mater and overjoyed
Mm.
to be doing so. But 15 or 20 years ago, we sort of said we would really like to plant our flag in the ground as being one of the best in class of the kind of communications we create for parents and families and how to meaningfully engage them in the life of Wake Forest. And our philosophy has always been the university and parents both share the same goal. We want students to succeed. We want our students to thrive and be wonderful here. And we would much rather walk hand in hand with families along the way than hold them at elbows length and say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. We really want to partner in a way that a high tide rises all boats, if you will. So that's kind of how we got started. And I would also say we approach the way we work with families as deeply believing that families are our most important partners, right? Our families are the ones that we turn to for support and love and care and buoying when we need it. So we want to harness all of the great things that parents can provide when their students are in college and also help sort of educate about what looks different in college. College parenting looks really different from high school parenting. Most of us have grown up. I have a college senior, so I'm a little bit away from this in my own life, but most of us hear from K through 12 teachers and administrators, parental involvement equals student success, parental involvement equals student success. And
Mhm.
unless and until your student's college sort of tells you, hey, it looks different now, and here's how it looks different and why it looks different, I don't necessarily feel like we're doing our families a justice. Like, we don't want to gatekeep any of the success things that they need to be doing in college. We want to help them sort of shift into the right gear as they get into college.
So in 2010, you started a blog. Tell us about that and what's special about that.
So, back at the early days of blogging, if you will, or early for us at least, I had worked for a while in our alumni office at Wake Forest. I would hear from my friends and my classmates and recent graduates about how much they missed campus. They missed being able to see it and see what was going on and just be there. So, we had started a blog that was meant for alumni that was just called Quad View because I had a window that looked out onto our quad and I would sort of look out and talk about what was happening. And we changed some responsibilities in our office, and I moved over into our parent and family office and took that blog with me sort of in a redesigned way and called it the Daily Deac, and it was meant for parents and families. And, in terms of why it was a blog, probably the most reasonable answer that I can think of now, because it just feels like it's so long ago, is back in the day, schools had smaller staffs, right? And we didn't always have the ability to push every single email out. So we found a blog service that allowed us to post to our website, feed it out to interested subscribers, and it was not, an individual staff member formatting or anything like that. So it was less labor intensive and just a really nice way for people who were interested to opt into the blog. And over time, that readership grew. We have probably about 8,200 subscribers right now.
Wow.
Our undergraduate class, the 4 undergraduate classes total, probably 50 to 5,500. And not everybody that is in our system that receives this blog is a current parent. One of the interesting happy accidents of the Daily Deac is that I hear from a lot of brand new staff members who have subscribed because somebody else on campus has said this is a great way to learn what the school is about. Helps you understand campus traditions and moods and the ebbs and flows of the year. So while it's mostly parents and families, we have some staff and some undergraduate students who read it, which is a enormous point of pride for us. We like to feel like, we're a big tent, everybody's welcome.
Yeah. So walk us through how you decide what goes into that. Is it on a regular cadence every week, or is it just kind of whenever something comes up?
So it is, if you can believe this, it is an every weekday,
Oh,
all year
wow.
round, with the exception of like I've started taking off like winter break and stuff like that. I'll take off holidays, I'll take off winter break. But part of the joy of a blog is sometimes you can pre-schedule. Like we had orientation for our new families Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. So I had pre-scheduled some content. I knew there would be people that would need information. But one of the great joys of working at a university is it's cyclical, right? Every year you have move in and orientation and midterms and people getting that first fall cold and finals and football games and all the things. So there's a certain amount of content that you can predict from year to year. And there's also those moments that you can capitalize on something that's happening, a big athletic win and everybody's excited, or a great speaker coming to campus or whatnot. So the Daily Deac has been a mixture really of those things that we can predict. And I happen to use Slack. We've got a nice scheduling feature where I put in what I've written about today and I carry those calendars over from year to year. So I can look back and go, hey, around this time of year, we talked about this thing. But I also capitalize on what's happening in the moment. And because we've been doing this blog for such a long time, I'm fortunate to have a lot of campus partners, colleagues of mine, who have information that they want amplified. So for me to come up independently with 225 columns a year, if you will, would be one thing. But I have lots of people saying, hey, could you make sure students or families know about this? Hey, we've got this great new program, et cetera. So it's this really beautiful blend of campus partnerships, observation on my part, experience, and the regular ebb and flow of college life helps inform how we decide what to say.
That sounds like a really fun job. Like I,
It's amazing. I love it. I would say I have the best job at Wake Forest, but other people would say that theirs is the best.
yeah, because it's like I hear it from a lot of higher ed Marcom leaders, and they're, when we talk about content and content strategy and stuff, it's like, well, it's my only job isn't just to do, make content, creation or managing the content. It's also all this other stuff, and so especially Marcom leaders at like smaller schools where they're wearing a
Hmm.
lot of hats and stuff like
Right.
that. They're
Lots of
kind of like,
hats. Yes.
we're having conversations of like, well, what's like the few things you can do that are the highest leverage, and it's like the dream would just be, I get to roll out of bed and like write, and, talk to my audience. I find that super fun. The newsletter that I do is weekly for higher ed marketing leaders. And it's the most fun part of my week because I just love sitting down and just going, what are we talking about today or this week?
Right. Right. And I think part of the way I look at my job is in years past, as we were trying to sort of build these connections with campus partners, I would say, what questions do you get all the time from families? Let me help you answer them. Because if I can put them in here and answer it once or twice, you may not get 10 phone calls about it. So there really is a beautiful symbiotic relationship between things that our campus partners want families to know and the way I can help get those messages out there. And I'm grateful for their partnership. They have so many interesting programs and things to tell and exciting stories and new research that a lot of my job is amplifying the great work of others and kind of curating it in ways that make sense and timing that makes sense for our families.
Have you ever watched an Olympic relay race? Did you see the one where the runner passed the baton to the next runner who grabbed it and then just walked off the track? Don't worry if you haven't seen it because it doesn't exist, because that would never happen. And if it did, it would surely go viral because it would be such a bizarre moment in sports history. Folks, this is how so many colleges are operating with their videos. The videographer hands them the finished video, and then maybe they take a couple steps and post it to YouTube with a vague title, or they'll toss it in an email or two. But that's about where they stop and move on to the next thing. And when you lack a clear plan for distribution, it's hard to know where the finish line is. And so you stop way short of the goal, and only a fraction of your audience has an opportunity to see your video. Distribution is just one of the things we address in our strategy workshops. Not only are we going to help you figure out what videos you should be making, but we're going to show you exactly what to do with those videos when they're done. And all of this is built around you and your resources. So we're not going to hand you a plan that's unrealistic for your team, nor are we going to try to sell you a bunch of videos. Learn more at unveiled.tv/strategy, and on that page you can flip through a real strategy blueprint that we made for a client. All right, let's get back to the show. Strategically. Do you have a real example of where the Daily Deac really changed a parent's behavior or student's behavior, like something kind of concrete where this major win, came out of it?
I do. I was thinking about how to sort of show what that might look like. I get emails from families all the time, and sometimes they're families that I don't ever hear from until graduation, and they, tell me that they did this or that. But I had an email from a mom this recently in May. Her student was graduating, and she reminded me that she had talked to me earlier in her son's time at Wake Forest, and he had been having some academic challenges, if you will. And she said, I remember reading one of your blog posts about CLASS, our Center for Learning Access and Student Success, which has peer tutoring and academic coaching and all kinds of resources. And she had provided that information to her student, and she told me that his experience there was transformative and helped get him from the struggle moment of being an early, first or second year student, getting the help that brought him ultimately to graduation. We tell students a lot of the same information, right? Sometimes it doesn't resonate when we tell them directly as much as it does if their family gives them a little boost. We have a really world-class Office of Personal and Career Development at Wake Forest, and one of the things that they've done in the last couple of years is they have a professional photo booth for headshots. And I had advertised that in our Daily Deac, like, hey, if your students need headshots, there's this great free resource. All they have to do is walk into this room in this building and they can get it. And a mom messaged me that her daughter had been saying, oh gosh, I've got to get a headshot for LinkedIn. And mom was like, hey, here you go. And the daughter quickly got that headshot. And I also have a lot of families who will say, I followed your advice and did this, or I followed your advice and did that. I also get, not infrequently, some emails from colleagues. We have a tremendous baseball analytics program at Wake Forest, really top of the line in terms of how we have students that work with our baseball coaching staff on analyzing film and pitch count and all the things. I don't know all the things because I'm not as up on baseball as I should, but they try to recruit incoming first year students because what they're really looking for is, can we get students that can do this for all 4 years and sort of really grow their expertise? And I got a lovely email from one of my colleagues that is working with baseball analytics and asked me if I could share something this past summer with our incoming students, because they said the Daily Deac was one of the most popular ways that the students who applied in the previous year knew that this program existed. So it's a combination of helping move the needle in parent or student behavior, but also assisting colleagues who say, I get the most boost when we ask students to apply for X if it's been published in here. So it's really a joy to be able to help connect all those pieces together to help our students and our campus partners.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you get a lot of comments? Like, is it a commentable thing, or is it mostly you'll get back end emails?
Mostly it's back end emails. I have not generally had the time to moderate comments individually on the blog, but I get a lot of emails. I mean, I probably get Oh, I get hundreds in a year. And part of what I commit to is anybody that emails me about the blog or in response to it, or even just to ask an unrelated question, I will respond to them because
Mm.
I feel like we owe that to them. We want to be the kind of place where we're going to be responsive that way. My favorite emails, if I'm most honest, I get emails from graduating senior families a lot, which I've sort of referred to as breakup emails, where they're like, "Hey, Betsy, you don't know me, but I've been following you since my student's first year. And, I've loved feeling connected to campus and I feel like I know you. And it's time to say goodbye now because John is graduating." And so,
Yeah.
like, nothing makes my heart warmer than those moments. It's an honor to be connected or to be part of that connective tissue between a student's experience and a parent's experience of your institution. It's just really, it affirms me in so many ways. And it is great to be able to feel useful to our parent community that way.
Yeah, when it speaks to your philosophy of, having there be a person behind the blog, not just an institutional voice. So,
Yes.
and I think as a parent, just envisioning my daughters going to college and getting, an email or a blog or something from the Office of Admissions or something like that would just
Right.
seem so much more cold than from Betsy. And you feel like you know her and
Right.
you feel like you can email her, ask a question. So, I mean, how has that played out for you?
I think that's been part of the secret sauce. And I'm not sure that it was intentional on my part at the beginning. I wanted to just be myself, right? And to share a little bit about my life. I'll post pictures of my dogs. I'll tell stories about my kids or my husband or whatever. Like, not over much, but just enough to let me feel like a human to them.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my dissertation, some of the work that I was looking at was how are blogs received? How are corporate blogs or institutional blogs received? And the ones that came from an actual person, a named first person author, engendered so much more trust than ones that were like the office of, insert name here,
Mhm.
for all the reasons that you say. And if you think about the way many of us are, if you have to, call a business or a company and you have to go through 8 steps on an automated thing to
Yeah.
then hear an automated voice as opposed to like, "Hey, it's Betsy, can I help you?" It just makes a difference in how you feel received. And part of that, I think, is the spirit that Wake Forest has always held as an institution from my student days and preceding my student days, certainly, is that we're a face to face place. We're a personal place. We want to, offer sort of warm Southern hospitality, if you will, but also help you feel like you matter. And being an individual person with a name that you can hit reply and I'll answer you. We know it's not insignificant that families are entrusting their most important things in the world, which is their children, to us for 4 years. Tuition, whether you're going to, any school in the world, tuition is a thing for families. Like, I hate writing that check every time. It's a lot. And, I want you to feel, and moreover, Wake Forest wants you to feel like we're in your corner. We want to provide something for you that can help you.
Yeah. That's great. And you mentioned your dissertation. So tell us more about that because you did research linking parent comms to, real outcomes. So walk us through. I think it's cool to have. I mean, that's what makes you the final boss here, I think, is that now you've actually got evidence-based stuff you're bringing to the show. So lay it on
Yep.
us.
So my degree is in higher education, but I was doing a communication based dissertation. And one of the things, there's a lot of research out there on colleges and students and various nuances of students, first generation students, working parents, you name it. There is very little research on the communications resources that colleges and universities dedicate to how they describe themselves, how they describe their institution, and how they build relationships with their parents and families. So I wanted to look at, is there any kind of linkage between how often and how deeply do parents and families of college students read the things that not that students, that universities produce for them, and if there are any outcomes of interest that may have a connection. So I was trying to think of like what matters to institutions. I think, first of all, one of the things we all want is for parents and families, as well as our students, of course, to feel like they are satisfied with their students' college, right? So, do they report high satisfaction with that experience? The second thing I think about is much has been made over the last 15 or 20 years about parents and families being involved in their students. For example, like if their student is experiencing a difficulty, is mom or dad trying to call the office in question or the president or the dean or whatnot about how do I get this fixed, or are they letting the student do it? And one of the things most schools would tell you is we really want to have a student connect with those offices themselves. It's much more meaningful for a student that has a housing issue to talk to the housing office, get to know the people in the office, form those relationships, than it is to have someone else take care of it for them. And then last, I thought about, every college runs like an annual fund or something where they're trying to get, charitable donations. So I was trying to look at how deeply did families read those communications that were provided to them, and did they seem to have any impact on those behaviors? And probably not surprisingly, with lots of research, you go in with a hypothesis, and a lot of times you find that it's true. Those families that read the most frequently and the deepest tended to be the most satisfied, the least likely to intervene, and more likely to make a gift when that annual fund ask came. And I would be remiss as a scholar to not specify correlation does not equal causation. So I did not do the kind of dissertation where I could say, because they read this, they did that. But I
Right.
can say there appears to be a pretty strong linkage between the two. And if I were ready to get back into the research world, I would be doing some follow-up studies, but I started my dissertation at 45 and ended at 49, and I'm really happy to get out of that mode for a little while. So maybe I'll go back to that one day.
Yeah. And you have, speaking of, parents kind of coming alongside and letting the student, lead the change and, advocating for themselves. You have a term that you use, stop, drop, and roll, which I haven't heard since I was like 7.
Right. It's the old fire safety standard.
Yeah. So what is that philosophy? Because I think this hits on the biggest resistance that schools have, at least that I've heard to, people that have been on the show and that I've talked to, about not wanting the parents to get involved because they want the students to be independent. So
yep.
Tell us what you think.
And again, this kind of comes back to the whole idea of we don't want to gatekeep what the rules are at the college level. So understanding that it's so important for students to develop their own problem solving skills and to learn to self-advocate and, to troubleshoot, to learn how to problem solve. And as a mother myself, even though I do this for a living, it's very hard when my own kiddo has an issue. And I am a type A problem solver. I want to help. So it's really hard for me not to want to react and do. And I've had to very much bite back some of my gut reactions. So we were trying to come up with something that was sort of short and memorable to realign the sort of best practices, if you will, for college parenting. And we came up with stop, drop, and roll. So every college student in the world at some point is going to pick up the phone or FaceTime or text and have this sort of litany of either things that they're unhappy about or big decisions that they have to make that they're mulling over. Should I be a major in comm, or should I be a major in English? And I don't know. And, or, my roommate's bothering me and I have a burnt out bulb in our bathroom, all the things. And so we came up with stop, drop, and roll. And the whole idea is sort of like when you get that contact from your student, whether it's a complaint or a decision they have to make or a problem that they have to handle, just kind of stop and take a deep breath and kind of ask yourself, is this something that your student's capable of handling on their own? And many, many times it probably is. So that's the stop. The drop is drop whatever plans you might have to help provide the answer or provide guidance and lean more into questioning that might help them get there on their own. So, gosh, honey, I know it must be hard to try to decide whether you want to be a comm major or an English major. Are there any offices on campus who might help you work through some of that discernment? What have you already tried? Didn't I hear at orientation we had a facilities customer service line where if you had a problem, you could get there? So figure out ways to help them think through it and then roll. This is the tough part. Roll with their solution, especially if it's not your solution, right?
That's hard.
It is. It's so hard. And I'd
be like, roll with my solution anyways, no matter what your solution is.
Right.
Let me give you the solution to roll with.
I know. I said at some parent things before, imagine right now you've got a child in college and they've got a cold and they know they have a big test or a big presentation coming up and there's some little irksome administrative thing that they have to take care of. You as a loving parent or family member might be inclined to say okay, you're sick. I'm going to order you some Theraflu to come to your room, and I can make that call to the office and blah, 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 blah. And then I say to them as lovingly and well-intentioned as I can, like 5 years from now, your student is going to be in a job and maybe they have a house and the AC has just broken and they're getting ready to take their toddler to daycare and the toddler throws up and they have a big presentation due at work. So like, let's let your students learn now to manage multitasking and putting out fires and figuring out their way. Because if they do it now, when other things happen later in life, they're ready. Like my problem solving skills are extensive. I have done this for years. I'm almost 56. My 21-year-old still needs to build those things and get that muscle memory. And so
Mhm.
that's really what Stop, Drop, and Roll is about, just helping us not react. Like one of the terrible things about being a parent is we hate when our students are uncomfortable, sad, hurt, all the things.
Mhm.
But how do we take ourselves out of jumping in those moments and figuring out maybe our students can get there themselves
Yeah.
if we just give
Yeah.
them space, right?
Yeah. My dad used to say all the time, you're only as happy as your least happy child.
100%. Well, it's funny. I was telling this story during parent orientation. I was talking to a family. So when my students started college, I think they were 2 weeks in. It was almost Labor Day. And they had said something about like my throat's a little scratchy. And I was not thinking too much of it. And then they called me the next day and said, "Can you come home and pick me up? I have COVID." And my immediate reaction was like, whoa, like I had no idea this was happening and was a little irked maybe that my student hadn't told me. But then they told me what happened. Well, their throat was scratchy, so they tried to get an appointment with student health. Student health was full. So they researched what CVS Minute Clinic was close by, went to CVS, had the presence of mind to say, I wonder if I should get a COVID test. Here are my symptoms. All of that was done and dusted by the time they told me they were sick, had COVID, and were too sick to drive home. So while my initial reaction was sort of like, gosh, I wish they had relied on me, I was actually so proud because they figured all that stuff out without me momming it through for them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the essence of Stop, Drop, and Roll. And once I had that moment, I was like, my kid's a lot more prepared than I realized, and I should just let them go and they'll let me know when they need me.
And does Stop, Drop, and Roll like make its way into the Daily Deac at all? Is that like
Yes,
some?
it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And I will be very honest and tell families, I repeat sort of the idea of Stop, Drop, and Roll several times throughout the course of the year. And I have a message that one of my sort of weekly messages over the summer just to the incoming parents sort of introduces them to that concept. And I say to them, like, hey, if you contact my office about something and I say, you would be best served to let your student handle that, that is not me trying to be sort of judgy or telling you what to do. I'm really trying to help your student grow. I knew Stop, Drop, and Roll was working when I started to get emails from families saying, I stopped, dropped, and rolled. I did it. And it was really nice to be able to affirm that. And I've also gotten emails from families where they've said, I stopped, dropped, and rolled, and my student has done this, 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 and this, and they are still stuck. Now I need help. And I'm like, that's perfect. Like if your student tries all the things and they haven't solved their issue, that's exactly the time to come back to me and let me figure out where I can help connect them to get it done. So it's not meant to be a, stay out of things and never get involved, but like, let's
Yeah.
give them first crack at it.
Right.
And largely families have been pretty responsive to that.
That's great. I like that. So 17, 18 years of doing this, there's probably something about the blog that didn't land the way that you wanted it to, or some sort of failure, or you
Yep.
said something wrong. I know there's been a couple times in my newsletter where I have misstepped a little bit and I've gotten an email of people saying like, you shouldn't say
Yep.
that or something like that. What has that been for you?
And, I'm of the belief that all feedback is good feedback, right? It helps us grow. And it's funny that you asked this question on the heels of talking about Stop, Drop, and Roll, because that was one of the things that I got an email from a parent once who was very offended at the idea and felt like I was lecturing, felt
Mm.
like I was infantilizing parents and sort of out of my lane. And that was 100% not my intent. But I also recognize that intent and impact are two different things. So, I wrote mom back or dad back, I don't even remember, and said, I am really sorry that I offended you. I did not mean to offend you. This is meant sort of lovingly as a framework that you can use. So I said, like, I really did not mean this in that way. And I've taken that to heart since then, trying to make sure that as I'm thinking about word choice and other things, Do I tell people like it's hard for me too? Sometimes that humanizes the advice. Do I, I'm quick to say, I didn't do it right here. Or just framing like I mean this lovingly. And that has tended to go better, but I've tried to be much more aware of our parents are coming from every single background and worldview and mindset. And there are going to be some things sometimes that don't hit the way I think they would, but trying to have sort of an honest conversation and thank them for that feedback and see what I can learn from it. And we all move on.
Yeah, I like that. All feedback is good feedback, or it's helpful feedback. It's not necessarily, someone isn't generally trying to be malicious and offend you with their feedback. It's just like, oh,
Right.
this is how it hit them. And they're
Right.
just
Exactly.
mirroring back to you how they understood it.
Hmm. Yes.
So, my last question for you. I think the big elephant in the room is for schools that don't have a blog. Should they start one? Do they need to hire someone like you to be that voice? Like, how do they start to take some of these concepts of, having close relationships with parents in this communication format and actually implementing it within the structures that they might already have without, making a complete new hire? Or do they need to make a hire?
I am of the firm belief that folks don't need to make a brand new hire. And I also want to acknowledge that there's lots of different models that other schools do. The school that my student goes to, they have a wonderful parent conversation calendar that they send out every now and again that sort of tells us things we should talk about their students. Some people have great social media games where they're posting a lot of things there. So you have to make sure that your solution fits your audience and fits your staffing. Having said that, I don't think, generally speaking, you need a new FTE to create a blog, even a daily blog. And there's a couple of different ways you can do it. I sort of built this job for myself because I liked doing it and I got all the other responsibilities that I was supposed to be doing done. And this was my passion project, so I built it on my own. There is probably any number of people on a campus that could be great contributors to something like this. There's somebody that's already working in your magazine office or your communications office or your alumni office that might really have an interest in having a short little something in a blog. Here's what I'm seeing on campus. Here's what I'm doing. Here's a great event. Here's a campus tradition that we want to tell you about. And the blogs don't have to necessarily be long. Another model people could look at is who on campus might be able to be rotating contributors. Say it's someone from your parent office that does one a week. It's somebody from your dean of students office, somebody from campus life. Pick your athletics, whatever your events team, etc. And they all do a contribution. There are some places that have students write some of the blog posts that they do. A lot of times those tend to be on admission sites. So I don't think there's necessarily any one model. When I look back and think about how I do it, and framed with the idea that I've been doing this a long time, so I'm not starting from scratch, but on short days, it takes 15 minutes. On long days, it takes an hour or an hour and a half. And I have lots of other things that I do. But parents and families want sort of an authentic view, not overly curated, not overly produced.
Right.
So that could look like you walking across campus with your iPhone and taking pictures of here's our beautiful trees or flower beds, or here are posters of events that are happening. Here's students reading on the grass, taking those, very candid shots and adding on like, hey, here's what your students are seeing today. One
Mm-hmm.
of the best things that I've ever done in the Daily Deac came through writer's block. I had nothing in the tank. And I just thought like, oh gosh, I got to write about something today. So I went and sat myself down at a high traffic area of campus and just people watched, because that's something I like to do, and started jotting down. I see a kid in an LA Dodgers hat. I see almost everybody's carrying a backpack. I see, 50% of our students have exterior headphones on, 50% have earbuds. Just did some
Mm-hmm.
basic like five senses. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What do I feel, etc. The sun's warm, the breeze is good, whatever. And I just put those together in sort of what I called a five senses post. And I made it thinking like I wasn't sure how it was going to land because it didn't feel intentional. And that is one of the things families have loved the most. I got more email from things like that where they said, I felt like I was right there with you. And that's really the value of this. How do I help families feel like they know what's going on, or I have an in, particularly one where I don't have to ask my student what's happening, because students don't love to answer 1,000 questions from their
Yeah.
loved ones. So it can be as simple as those things, and as simple as thinking about what are the normal things that happen in a year. How could I write about them? How could I tag up other people? Maybe you get the registrar to write a short post about what class registration looks like or what families should know. And there's lots of ways to make it happen. And I would say if there's anybody that's listening to this that wants to talk about how that could work, I'm happy anytime to talk about this to anyone, because I think it can be so valuable if it's the right solution for your school. And only, practitioners at the individual schools will know if this is right for them or not.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue. Tell us where people can connect with you at.
So, probably the easiest way is if they email me at parents, parents, at wfu.edu. That's our generic sort of parent and family information email. Those come straight to my inbox. I would be super happy to talk to anyone. They can find the Daily Deac. You can just Google Daily Deac, DAILYDEAC. Our mascot is the Demon Deacon, so we call ourselves the Deacs. So, Google Daily Deac Wake Forest, and you'll find us. You can read it there and see what else we have going on. But again, I like being able to have parents feel like they're warmly welcomed and they're in the know, because it helps them help their students. It helps them help us, and everybody wins is my theory.
Yeah. That's great. Well, it's been so great hearing from you. And I mean, just talking to you for the last 45 minutes, I can feel your warmth, and I could feel how that would come through in the writing. And I could feel how that would be really impactful for a parent who's wondering what's going on with their kid at school, who doesn't want to answer questions and things like that. So yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. And I admire your work too, John, and love to see what else comes forth from you in future podcasts.
Hey, thanks for listening. I want to give you two things before you go. Number one, reminder to sign up for the Higher Ed Storytellers Digest. It's my free weekly newsletter for Marcom leaders, where we talk about all things content creation and strategy in higher ed. Subscribe at unveiled.tv/newsletter. Number two, follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my name is John Azzoni, and it's spelled Johnazoni. All right, I'll catch you on the next episode, and in the meantime, I'll see you in your inbox. Okay, bye.